Marcos Falopa is a retired Brazilian football manager and former professional player. Born on April 19, 1962, in São Paulo, Brazil, Falopa's football journey began in his early years, growing up in the heart of Brazil's football culture. He started his career as a midfielder, playing for various clubs in the Brazilian football leagues. During his playing days, Falopa enjoyed a solid career with some of Brazil's more prominent clubs, including Palmeiras, where he became a key player in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Though not considered one of the most renowned players of his era, Falopa was known for his tactical intelligence and solid midfield play. He was also involved in helping Palmeiras secure important titles in the state championships and national competitions. Falopa's transition to management occurred after his retirement as a player. His coaching career took off in the late 1990s, and he gradually made a name for himself in Brazil. He started with smaller clubs, but eventually took on more high-profile positions in top-tier Brazilian football. His coaching style was rooted in discipline and a strong tactical setup, focusing on defensive organization and quick counterattacks. This approach earned him respect, although it was often criticized for being overly cautious in more attacking situations. Throughout his managerial career, Falopa worked for several Brazilian clubs, but his biggest success came with São Paulo FC, where he took on a leadership role in the late 2000s and early 2010s. He became known for his steady hand and ability to stabilize teams that were going through rough patches. However, his tenure with São Paulo was not without controversy, with some supporters questioning his tactical decisions and game management. Despite this, his time with São Paulo was marked by some key victories in national and international tournaments, including strong performances in the Copa Libertadores and the Campeonato Paulista. Falopa's coaching career also saw stints with clubs such as Guarani, where he worked to help elevate the team's performance, and other regional teams across Brazil. His influence, while not always leading to title wins, was more focused on building solid, competitive sides that could hold their own in Brazil's fiercely competitive football environment. Falopa's career has also been tied to Brazil's rich footballing history and the development of young talent, as he often worked with emerging players and nurtured their growth. Off the field, Marcos Falopa became known for his reserved personality and his deep understanding of Brazilian football's tactical nuances. While he was less involved in media and public speaking compared to some of his contemporaries, his work on the training ground spoke volumes. He was known to spend long hours analyzing matches, preparing his teams, and engaging in individual player development. This work ethic was appreciated by many within the football community, although it didn't always translate into consistent results. Later in his career, Falopa's fortunes took a downturn as he struggled to replicate the success he had enjoyed earlier in his career. His later years in football management were marked by several unsuccessful stints at various clubs, with his teams often finishing mid-table or below expectations. Despite this, Falopa remained a respected figure in Brazilian football, and his knowledge of the game was never in question. In addition to his time in Brazil, Falopa also explored opportunities outside the country. His brief international ventures did not yield the same level of success, and his time abroad was relatively short-lived. Nonetheless, Falopa continued to stay involved in football, often returning to Brazil to manage clubs or work as a coach in various roles within football academies. Throughout his career, Marcos Falopa built a reputation as a steady, tactical coach with a clear philosophy, though he was unable to achieve the lasting legacy that many of his peers did. His contributions to Brazilian football, however, remain respected, particularly in his work with club youth systems and his role in developing some of Brazil's more underappreciated talents. His name is still spoken with respect by those who remember his managerial efforts, even if his time at the very top of Brazilian football did not bring him the glory he had hoped for. In retirement, Falopa has largely remained away from the public spotlight, preferring to stay involved in football at a lower level, working with younger coaches and players, and occasionally offering his insights to the football community. Though his career may not have reached the heights of some of his contemporaries, Marcos Falopa's legacy in Brazilian football remains one of tactical acumen and dedication to the development of the game. After stepping back from active coaching, Marcos Falopa took on a more advisory and mentoring role within the football community. He became involved in assisting the development of young managers, offering his wealth of experience in both coaching strategies and team management. His approach, while often characterized as conservative, highlighted the importance of structure, discipline, and building a solid foundation for long-term success. One of the key aspects of Falopa's later career was his involvement in training younger coaches. With Brazilian football going through various tactical evolutions, his insights into traditional football methods, which emphasized defensive solidity and tactical balance, became increasingly valuable. Falopa often spoke about the importance of developing a strong team unit rather than focusing solely on individual brilliance. This philosophy was grounded in his experiences as a player and coach, where he frequently emphasized teamwork and cohesion as essential components of success. Though his managerial success was mixed, Falopa was never too far from football's ever-evolving landscape. His time as a manager saw shifts in the Brazilian footballing culture, from the dominance of traditional powerhouses to the emergence of newer clubs and regional teams challenging the status quo. Even in the midst of struggles at times, Falopa's ability to adapt his tactics based on the specific needs of the team helped him remain relevant in the world of Brazilian football. His work with youth academies, where he played a role in the early stages of developing young talent, was particularly noteworthy, with some players going on to achieve success in the national team setup. In terms of his public image, Marcos Falopa was always seen as a no-nonsense, pragmatic figure. While he didn't garner the same attention or accolades as other managers in Brazilian football, his approach to managing teams was often praised for its consistency. He wasn't one for flashy tactics or showmanship. Instead, he focused on practical solutions to help teams perform under pressure. His focus on defensive strength, midfield control, and disciplined attacking strategies was often seen as a counterbalance to the more flamboyant attacking styles of the era. Throughout the years, despite mixed results on the field, his influence continued to resonate with football insiders. His ability to motivate players, instill discipline, and maintain a competitive spirit helped him carve out a niche in the footballing world, especially at clubs in need of stability. Several Brazilian clubs that were going through transitional phases, experiencing financial difficulties, or undergoing managerial changes turned to Falopa as a stabilizing force, relying on his experience to guide them through turbulent times. In the post-managerial phase of his career, Falopa continued to share his footballing knowledge through coaching seminars and as a consultant for clubs. His impact, though subtle, was felt in the way younger managers approached their own tactical setups, many of whom respected his calm demeanor and the steady nature of his methods. In interviews, he often expressed his views on the evolving tactics in Brazilian football, especially with the rising importance of data analytics, modern fitness regimens, and the increasingly international nature of Brazilian football. Despite never achieving the iconic status of some of his peers, Falopa remained an integral figure within the broader footballing ecosystem. As he aged, he occasionally reflected on his coaching philosophy, acknowledging the successes and shortcomings of his career. Nonetheless, he expressed pride in the impact he made on the football culture in Brazil, particularly in terms of his contributions to developing players and his role as a mentor to younger coaches. Marcos Falopa's later years have been marked by a focus on reflection and giving back to the footballing community that shaped his career. He often spoke fondly of his time as a player and manager, recognizing that while his managerial career was full of highs and lows, it was ultimately a journey that had helped him grow both as a coach and as an individual. Ultimately, Marcos Falopa's story is one of quiet resilience and a deep commitment to the game of football, even when external recognition and accolades did not always follow. His contributions continue to influence Brazilian football, and his legacy as a tactician, a mentor, and a player remains an important part of Brazil's rich footballing history. Though his name might not be synonymous with trophies and grand success, it is nonetheless intertwined with the growth of the sport in Brazil, especially in the development of younger talent and the guidance of aspiring coaches who have benefited from his experience. As the years passed and the football landscape in Brazil continued to evolve, Marcos Falopa remained a respected figure in football circles, albeit more as a behind-the-scenes influencer than a headline maker. His quiet yet effective contributions to the development of the game, particularly in the realms of coaching and player development, were appreciated by those who understood the nuances of the sport. Throughout his retirement, Falopa's name was often mentioned when discussing the art of coaching, particularly in terms of building a solid, disciplined team. His ability to create systems that worked with the strengths of the players he had available, rather than imposing a one-size-fits-all approach, was a hallmark of his career. This flexibility made him a valuable resource for clubs looking for a coach who could manage through difficult seasons or transition periods. His coaching style, while pragmatic, was not devoid of insight. He valued adaptability and continued to learn, especially as modern trends began to take over, such as more advanced use of technology and tactical analysis in the game. Falopa's relationship with his former players and colleagues also remained positive. He was known for his no-nonsense approach, but his respect for his players' abilities and his effort to cultivate their skills was a core part of his management style. Many players who worked with him later spoke about the trust he placed in them, the individual attention they received, and the ways he prepared them for the tactical challenges they would face in top-tier football. Moreover, Falopa had a particular affinity for nurturing young talents, understanding that Brazilian football's future depended on its ability to develop the next generation of players. This passion for youth development was another key element of his post-managerial life. As a result, he remained active in youth football development programs, working with smaller clubs and academies to help coaches understand the fundamentals of building young, disciplined teams that could eventually contribute to the top levels of Brazilian football. Though he had little involvement in the media or public discourse, compared to more flamboyant personalities in Brazilian football, Marcos Falopa's thoughts on the evolution of the sport were often sought by those in the industry. He was an advocate for blending traditional Brazilian techniques with modern footballing methodologies, believing that the essence of Brazilian football, its flair, creativity, and passion, could coexist with tactical discipline and organization. In the latter stages of his life, Falopa began to reflect more on his journey and the sport's progress. He was content with the role he played in shaping players, coaches, and the footballing community. There were no regrets about the victories or the failures. They were all part of the broader tapestry of his football journey. Many of those who worked alongside him, from fellow coaches to players, often described him as a man of few words, but with a deep understanding of the game and a commitment to doing things the right way. His consistency and approach to football, while not always glamorous, had a lasting effect on those around him. The football world saw Falopa as a practitioner of the quiet revolution in coaching, where success is not always measured by trophies, but by the steady, methodical improvement of teams and players. Even without the glitter of major titles, he played an important role in Brazilian football's evolution, particularly during times of transition. His lasting legacy was the fact that he helped ensure the continuity of Brazil's football culture, even in a changing global environment. In his retirement, Marcos Falopa largely withdrew from public life, but remained in contact with football institutions, occasionally offering his expertise in private seminars or behind-the-scenes advice. His legacy lives on in the many coaches who followed his example of solid, reliable management, and in the younger players who benefited from his insight and coaching. While he may not have been one of the headline-grabbing figures of Brazilian football, his impact on the game remains undeniable. His later years were often spent in the company of family, friends, and former players, reflecting on the successes and challenges of a life devoted to football. His contributions to Brazilian football might not have brought him the fame and fortune that some of his peers achieved, but they certainly solidified his place as a respected figure in the sport's rich history. For those who had the privilege to work with him or learn from him, Marcos Falopa will always be remembered as a coach who helped build teams and players in a way that was thoughtful, disciplined, and long-lasting, even if the spotlight did not always shine on him. Marcos Falopa may never have been the manager to lift the grandest trophies or become a household name outside of Brazil, but in the world of football, his influence as a steady and knowledgeable presence remains significant. His legacy is not defined by the trophies he won, but by the respect he earned from those who understood the true value of good coaching and the development of both players and teams.